Welcome to another episode of the 1946 podcast. This is season 1,
the Culture Shift Tour,
with your host, Brent Roberts.
And I am Sharon Roggio. Yeah, so there's another TikToker that I'd never met in real life until we went to Birmingham that I've been seeing all over TikTok. Her handle is Lauren PCRNA on the TikTok. And we'll put that in the show notes, but also is very vocal about standing up for LGBTQ rights, is a lesbian mom in Birmingham, and so is very involved in...
And a nurse,
so the healthcare systems, kids, school system, LGBTQ rights.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And she's also got a really great hookup at the local drag bar.
She
got us a VIP
delivered.
table.
Right, so the drag in Baton Rouge was great. Yep. But then when we talk about the hospitality we got in Birmingham, Lauren hooked us up with VIP.
Yep. We got to dance, we got to drink, we got to enjoy more incredible drag performances, and the energy there was just wonderful.
What was the name of that club?
Al's on 7th?
Al's on 7th, yes.
Okay.
Al's on 7th. Thank you very much. Dave is the owner.
That's right. Brian and Kelly came with us, and
Brian did not go.
Brian did not come with us.
He stayed home. Brian went to bed like a good boy.
Kelly came out for his drag show.
Kelly had a blast. Yeah.
She had a great time with us.
Yeah.
And then we were plenty rested up for the next day for our event that next evening at the Unitarian Universalist Church with Reverend Julie.
Yes.
And
they fed us so well there. We had a smorgasbord. I mean,
such
cakes,
good food.
But I mean, so many different choices of food, and the community made it all. They brought it all.
We also got to go to dinner with some people there in their home in Alabama.
Before we went to the event, yes, we got somebody slipped into our DMs, as they often do. Thank you for the people who support us.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I know you're going to be in Birmingham, and what can we do? I'm like, we need a meal. There are 6 of us, and we had another home cooked meal in a stranger's home, and got to share stories for an hour and a half together.
Breaking bread. As we like to call it,
the best way
communities
to meet people.
And then at the church, we had some really good interviews as well. So typically,
there were a lot of people that came to that. That was another great, well-attended.
It was well-attended.
Very mixed crowd.
Yep. So it's like this resurrected pastor within me with a whole different message, getting to do this beautiful story with Rocky and the 1946 movie that has obviously moved my heart as a middle-aged man to travel the country in the middle of the summer for a month. So if you have not seen this movie, you are just in for such a treat for what this movie does and what a beautiful conversation it is on this topic that you have been waiting to have.
And for me, this movie tonight is one of those things. We need to get some people out of some dangerous spaces. There are some people in our community that are isolated, that are hearing nothing but the drivel out of, certain people's mouths. And they are feeling really scared about things, and they don't need to be scared. They need to understand that we are a people of love and acceptance and inclusion.
There's a history behind this, and I think it's important. And one of the challenges I like to give to Christians is, are we willing to consider that we're sincere in our beliefs? Many right-wing Christians believe they're saving the lives of babies, but is there a chance that we are sincerely wrong?
We say welcome and inclusion means you should be able to fully participate in whatever ways you want to participate in our community, including all the way up to the head of our church, the president of the board.
It was not MIGA. Who knows what MIGA is? Make Israel Great Again. There was a group of religious guys who believed that God's plan on earth would only exist if Israel was the economic and military power of the world, and the only way Israel could be restored to that place and overthrow the Roman Empire was for their race and religion to be in charge of civil government. sound like anybody else we know.
We've had great hospitality. We've had great food. We've met wonderful strangers. We've had people Google the van while we're at gas stations and say, as a Christian, let me tell you. And I'm like, oh boy, but it was good tell you, so it's good. And you know, when you put yourself out there, sometimes you get surprised.
Yep.
And y'all, we're feeling great down here, so I'm ready to come back.
And so usually during these events, we're with our cameras in another room while the film is screening. And so for some people who've already seen the 1946 documentary, we're doing interviews while the film is going on.
Or after at the end. Yeah, totally. Or while the film is going on, what else are we doing? Oh.
Emails, making plans for our next stop.
The next stop, yeah.
All the things.
Yeah.
But we got to interview Ford and Rodney.
Oh, right. We did do these ones before because they drove down from Tennessee. And Ford and Rodney are some of our first donors, and they've been there for a long time. They were there when they actually were part of a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, helping us raise funds for one of our many expensive endeavors, working on technical post-production.
Wow.
And they won the event, which was a free trip to come hang out with the 1946 crew somewhere.
Awesome.
And they met us in Nashville, and we put them up in a hotel, and they got to hang, and we met for the first time in person, and they got to see a cut of the film before it was released in our world premiere, because we were doing focus groups. So they got to see it where the animation wasn't done, or there were scenes we didn't film, and so it would be a black screen that says animation to come or to be filmed, then kind of like what we're going to do, just to kind of get a feel for how people are vibing with the pace and the tone, and are we missing anything? And so they got to see an early cut. But anyway, so what do y'all talk about? I didn't get to see this interview.
Well, here you go.
Let's do it.
Well, I am Ford Knox.
And my name is Rodney Blaylock.
So we are actually from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Well, I'm from LA, but I moved to Chattanooga, but he is from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yep. A whole life.
Raised?
Yep. Born and raised, Chattanooga.
So did you both grow up pretty conservative?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Even from being from California. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very.
Going to Southern Baptist Church Wednesdays, twice on Sunday, all the extracurriculars that were involved in that.
And it was different for me in California because in the South, going to church is culture. In California, it's not culture. So if you're going to church, you go because you want to go to church. And that's what we did. And I was raised in that, but I fell in love with the church. You know, I fell in love with God. You know, I fell in love with Jesus. So that did still get instilled in me. And I just had parents who were also very conservative because they were raised going to church as well. And it's funny to say that because a lot of people go to church, but like we really practiced it. Like we really believed it.
And while you were both practicing these faiths, did you also know the whole time that you were gay?
Oh, yeah.
Strong denial, but I mean, it was there. There was a lot of fighting that and telling myself that's not the reality, but it was definitely there. And I knew it was there.
I knew it was there from a young age, like 5. I knew I was different. I didn't know what the term was. I knew I was different. Even my mom caught it. And back then, you know, this was the 80s. They didn't know what to say, but my mom told my dad one time, she told me later, but she was like, yeah, I think Ford's going to have some problems when he grows up. And that was her way of thinking like, he might be gay, but she didn't want to put words to it. So they knew since I was little.
So my coming out was really a push from my now ex-wife. Coming to terms with me being gay, having a relationship with her where we were close enough to where I could have that conversation and us kind of go down that road together, and realizing that our relationship as it was not going to be able to continue, and not having the plan to actually come out at that point, and her pushing me and saying, this is what you have to do this. You have to live authentically in who you are as a person and not continue to live in this closet that has caused you to be medicated throughout parts of your life. And so I actually owe a lot to her as to why I decided to come out. because we were married for 11 years and have 2 children. And thankfully we had a very open mindset between the both of us to where, you know, it wasn't this thing that we were against, even though it kind of was the end of our relationship. And so it made it very easy for that information to be shared with our children, because it wasn't so detrimental to them.
My coming out was a long road. I did a lot of things behind the scenes. You know, I kept being gay behind the scenes, but in front, I had girlfriends. You know, there was no choice except to be straight. That was the only choice I had. I went to a live-in therapy program. Strangely, it was good for me. It was really good. They taught me certain ways on how to change behaviors that I had. They never tried to convince me, don't be gay. But they tried to just encourage me in my walk with the Lord, and then also tried to help me modify certain behaviors. And that was helpful for me, getting some life tools. But even when I graduated that program, I still couldn't stay away from the men I was attracted to. And so I started secretly dating. And then I finally came out when I had my first real boyfriend. And that was in my late 20s. So, and that was not easy. That was not easy. But then eventually over time I met him and I fell head over heels. Like, I never knew when you knew, and everybody was like, oh, you know when you know. And I'm like, but how do you know? And when I met him, I was like, oh, I know. Within 3 months, I was like, I'm going to marry this guy. I'm going to marry him. And then that was it. Like once I realized how much in love I was like, there's no way I'm coming out to everyone, like, and I'm going to marry this man.
It's, I mean, refreshing, like to have lived not being your true self and having that anxiety and that constant where you like think about everything you say and the hand gestures that you make, to just like existing with another person and not even having to think about it. I don't even know that there's a word to really kind of describe what kind of relief that is. To where like I don't even think about sharing that he's my husband with people, because that's us, like that's our relationship. Right. It's so easy and simple.
It was relief. I still sometimes get a little bit of that anxiety because of so many years of living with that. Being with him now, though, that feels natural. That's normal. Like there's no other question. There's nobody else I'd rather be. I still can't talk with my parents about it. Like he's, to them, he's like my best friend or something, my roommate. Like something. They've never once acknowledged him as my husband. And so that I still get hit in the face with it, you know, sometimes where I see where people don't acknowledge, but I don't care.
I think it's been a roller coaster for the past 10 years in this country.
I felt great when I could get married, and then felt reversed a little bit when things started going backwards a little bit. So I've had ups and downs that would be the equivalent of a roller coaster. Yeah, and then being in Tennessee, where we have government that was trying to do the drag bans and trying, you know, that's the state where that originated from. And then, of course, that filters into the gay community. It makes things, I went from being like free and open in the general public to being guarded a little bit more. Cautious.
Well, one thing in particular, it's affected our Pride Festival. Last year, it was held indoors for the first time that I've been attending, just because of the fear of it being out in an open public space.
Well, and from a lot of the drag queens we've seen, they've kind of fought back. And so, but I mean, it's just an interesting environment. You know, like again, I said again, you just become more cautious.
I mean, just in the capital of Tennessee, we have Nazis marching through the streets in Nashville. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but for gay people, I mean, that's a scary thing.
I mean, even in the 80s when it was the AIDS crisis, I mean, there was voices against gay people and AIDS community, people who had AIDS. But now you're just hearing it like point blank everywhere. It's being shouted. So yeah, there's definitely more fear involved.
I think we choose to not live a life in fear. I mean, we are smart about it and we're cautious, and it causes you to make different choices sometimes. But we, you know, we choose where we show affection in public as opposed to just anywhere and everywhere. That's not something that we can just openly do in all spaces.
One way I combat that is like, I don't always watch the news. I stay informed, but I don't always watch the news. The news is fear-based. So I try to distance myself from things that are legitimately there to just strike fear. And I tell him and our family all the time, I'm not going to live in fear. I won't live in fear. Perfect love is the opposite. It casts out all fear according to the Bible. But, so I'm going to live in love and I'm not going to allow fear to dictate my life. I won't. I can't live that way.
I hold true Christians a little accountable because I feel like it's their responsibility to take the lead and speak out against Christian nationalism, to say that we are not one and the same. Yeah, I kind of stumbled upon this film and it's like early days before it was even titled 1946 when it was lost in translations.
Well, we found Kathy Baldock.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the road to the film was Kathy Baldock and just following her videos, and then just the subject matter. It was, a big deal. It kind of grabbed my attention because for me, I had never even crossed my mind that the word homosexual was not always in the Bible. So to hear that, it was kind of mind blowing. And so, of course, I wanted to find out more. And
then watching Kathy Baldock for me was really interesting because I'd never seen anybody who actually like studied the Bible like I had, but then went through it in a very logical, explanatory way. It was just so cool to see somebody who was just like me, who described their belief in God and their love of God, and then how their life flipped upside down because of one event. And so they started searching and finding more truth than what they realized before. Oh man, a movie like 1946 helps because it's non-threatening. The first time I saw it, that was one of the first things I fell in love with. I was like, this is something that Christians can watch. This is something that non-Christians can watch. Because it's not about hitting you over the head with, oh my gosh, you're ridiculous, or it doesn't come across as what would be quote unquote a liberal agenda. You know what I mean by that? It comes across as very caring for both sides and like, how can we reconcile? Being a Christian myself, I've always known Christians should always put down their weapons first and make a bridge. And I have always dreamed of doing that, making a bridge between me and whoever needs the help. And I think that 1946 does that. It makes a bridge between the Christian world and the gay world, which is a world I've lived in between my whole life. And so I was super happy to see a film like this because it absolutely makes that bridge.
It's an incredible film. I've been super happy to be a small little part of that, because it's when I found out about it and as I followed the film, I had to participate in some way and looked for ways to contribute. And in doing that, was able to befriend Rocky and build a relationship with her. And I'm just constantly looking for opportunities to just put it out there, and share the information, because I think it's a world-changing film, and it deserves all the attention, because it's incredible information, and because it's done in the way that it's done. I think you can reach anybody and everybody.
So my hope for this country is that things start to get revealed, the truth. That's really what I hope, and I hope that the real Jesus gets revealed, that real love gets revealed, that it gets revealed that my marriage doesn't affect your marriage. Like, I can have this marriage and be in love, and it doesn't affect anybody else. And we can actually be like, we just saw, the back of our coins and money says e pluribus unum, out of the many one. Like, we really can be that. Like, that is an ideal that we can live by, and we can all be different and still be one. That's my hope for this country.
Yeah, and my hope for this country would just be we could come back together, because we are so divided right now, and we focus on the things that make us different from each other in a negative way, because of fear that's being sowed throughout everyone. And so my hope is that we can celebrate the differences that we have and realize that we're all one people.
I mean, if you don't like it, don't join in. But I mean, just live. We all can practice things that we want to practice. That is my hope, and that there's a lot more love.
Yeah, and that Facts Over Feelings shirt that he has on. So Rodney's another person that was someone I met on the TikTok and finally got to meet in real life. But one day over a conversation, I don't know, the Facts Over Feelings came up, and I'm like, oh, that's good. And we put it on a t-shirt. So
Right on.
Rodney has helped be t-shirt designer for the 1946 merch store.
Very
I'm wearing
cool.
it proudly.
And then the pastor of the church, Julie,
She was great.
she did the flaming chalice for us at the beginning of the event.
Yeah, to show us, to open up the...
Really
yeah.
beautiful.
So we welcome you to our space. So we light our chalice in honor of all of the ancestors who came before us, all of the ancestors who made all of this happen. We light this chalice for the advocates, the allies, and the activists who made this work possible. And I light this chalice for each of you, because in you, you are made of the same stuff as the stars in the universe, and you are holy and you are loved. Amen.
Yes. All the churches you and I have attended, from Pentecostal to Baptist to Lutheran, to go to a church like this and experience that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then to sit down and talk with her to hear what their church is doing and what's happening there in Birmingham directly from her experience was a really cool conversation as well that I want to share.
My name is Reverend Julie Conrady. We are at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Birmingham, Alabama. What I love about Alabama is that there are diverse viewpoints, more so than where I grew up. And I love the trees and the mountains and its natural beauty, which is really incredible. And I love all of the people here that are just so warm and inviting and make it a great space to be. I grew up in Oklahoma, and my upbringing was very white and very sheltered. And my community was very much, everyone that I was around were people who all thought the same. It was and I was never one of those people. I always thought a little bit differently. So when I was 12, I read the Bhagavad Gita for fun. And when I was 13, I read the Quran. And then I learned that I could go to college and study world religions. And I just thought that is the most wonderful thing in the world. And so I tried to be a United Methodist minister for a long time. And then I was labeled a heretic and became Unitarian Universalist, which is a much better fit. After I went to seminary, I taught high school for a while. I taught AP Government and World History. And then I heard the Spirit telling me, you are not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be in the pulpit. And so I went and became a hospital chaplain for a while. And as I was going through all the steps to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, our tradition brags that we have more steps to ministry than any other denomination. I was a hospital chaplain for 6 years. I was an award-winning chaplain. I loved my work. And then I got ordained in 2017. And my boss, who is Independent Church of Christ, said that women should not be ordained and started trying to get me fired. There were so many ways that he felt he truly loved his community. And there were so many gaps in that love that I have tried to fill. And I want all people to understand that they are loved and welcome and whole. And my stories of exclusion from my life just give fuel to that fire of reminding people and going above and beyond, showing them that they are welcome. And so I decided to move on and go into search and found this community in Birmingham and moved my family here in 2018. And I moved here 8 months pregnant and had my my second child here in Birmingham right after arriving. So it's been a second home to us. There's an expectation that I'm not the head minister. There's an expectation that my husband's the minister, or that I'm somehow a lesser pastor. And so it's actually been the Black community in Birmingham that has really affirmed that, because the Black church for a long time has ordained women. And so I have found a lot of co-conspirators in that work that have affirmed me in that. But I think the hardest part is, women ministers are more open to sexual harassment. I've had many cases of that. And just the assumption that I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't have the head for business and finance that ministers need to have as well, is just a little frustrating. One of the most inspirational things that I have found being at this church and affirming the LGBTQ community are the rituals that we have done to affirm them, but also just to state outright. Every morning, I start every service by saying, whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are today, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. And so I start every service that way, but I also make sure that we're not just talking about queer issues during Pride Month, that we're talking about them year round, and that I'm giving voices to people of the community as frequently as I can. But one of the most powerful rituals that we have done in this community is a glitter blessing that we were blessed with glitter, little vials of glitter from Parody, New York City. And doing that glitter blessing, it never felt like a big deal to me it was that anointing of oil that I grew up with. It was just a very common thing. But when I do a glitter blessing in this community, there are buckets of tears. It is just such an affirming thing for them to hear that they are loved and to be blessed with oil. And there's this glitter element as well. And it's not just the queer community, it's their parents, it's their children, it's everyone involved in their lives that is so moved by this ritual. This past about 4 months ago, we had a principal in the suburbs of Birmingham who was demoted for being a lesbian. And so there was this huge public outcry, and we spoke at board meetings, and we just, had this whole thing. And I was invited to this special after party with the lesbians of Birmingham. They gave me a special ticket to get in. And I decided to bring my glitter stick with me. And I offered to any of them who wanted a glitter blessing. And so I was giving them my glitter blessing, and I was doing it with love and all those things. I didn't know how much of an impact it made until I got home. One of those women sent me a Facebook message that was this long about how much her church had abused her growing up, how she was told she was not worthy of love and affection, and how when I brought out the glitter stick, it actually brought up trauma for her, that she was, she had always had that anointing of oil as a negative experience. And she did it with me anyway, because she trusted me. And she went home after that event and cried for 2 straight hours because how healing that whole thing had been for her. And so I just try to remember in all of my encounters with the queer community that I'm trying my best to show that love to them, and I hope that they feel that love in a transformational way. What I would say to those in the queer community who have been traumatized by religion and by faith is that there is a home for you somewhere in Birmingham, Alabama. It may not be my community. My community is a little theologically diverse, and not everybody wants that. Some people want a little more Jesus, and some people don't want Jesus, but I am the head of the interfaith community in town, and there are dozens of churches and synagogues and other places who will welcome you with open arms and who want you to participate. And I know that it takes so much to work through that trauma and to just step your foot in the door, but there are people ready and willing to embrace you and move past the trauma that you've experienced, and we want to be here for you. I feel like our country is so polarized right now because we are afraid of each other, and because there is such an immense fear of people who are different and people who think differently and love differently and look differently that doesn't need to be there. And it has been fanned into flame by Christian nationalism and other hate groups, and it's really terrifying. If I had been in a community that ostracized me for how I felt and how I believed, growing up in that, it was very hard to break free of that mold. But those folks in general still very much love and care for me. And so I wonder how we got to a place of, you have to look and be just like me in order for me to love you. And our world is so beautifully diverse. There's so many wonderful people out there who think and look and believe and love differently than I do. I can't imagine why we can't come together and find what is similar between us. And there's so much that we all agree with. I think Christian nationalism is so dangerous because they are using the banner of Christianity. I think if it was just nationalism and we were telling people to worship the flag or worship the president or worship the White House, I think everyone would be able to see through it. But the fact that we put Jesus on it and somehow give this endorsement of if Jesus is on it, it must be the right thing, we really have to look at that lens critically and say that ever since Jesus was on this earth, there have been people who have misused the name of Jesus, who have killed in the name of Jesus. And do we really want to replicate those people from the past? I think people follow Trump because they are scared of change, and they are scared of a world where they are not the top and they don't automatically get entitled to all of the things they feel they deserve, and that people feel that Trump somehow provides all of those things for them. And I think it's a very scary place to believe that we're entitled to anything in this world. But, from the time Columbus set foot on this continent, people of European ancestry have felt entitled to be here. And so I think it's really that entitlement that draws people to Trump, that they feel somehow that they deserve more than they are getting. My hope for America is on the local level of where we can come together as neighbors and friends and people who go to the supermarket together and realize that we're all just trying to feed our kids and keep a roof over our heads and try to survive late-stage capitalism. There are so many things that bring us together, and I think that happens at the local level. I don't think right now at the national level that conversation is possible, but I hope one day it is. I think the message of 1946 is extremely important. That's why I was hounding your website and all these other things, begging to host your film. But the reason I think 1946 is so pivotal is because it really does get at that sacred text that millions and billions of people in the world hold so sacred. And to know that sacred text has been manipulated and changed over the years for political gain is really important for people to understand. And I think if folks understand that and recognize that there are other ways of looking at the same text, I think it is really critical for us, for this era of voting and going forward. I think the biggest thing that Americans can do right now for everyone to be included is to make sure that everyone gets to vote. Right now we have a massive felon population in Alabama that is mostly people of color who are not allowed to vote. Even those who have been exonerated, even those who have served their time, those folks deserve to vote just as much as I do. And I think there are so many barriers to voting. And one of the problems with the Trump presidency is those barriers have been increasing. And I think we need to be minimizing those barriers. Gerrymandering and voter suppression have hurt communities like Alabama and Oklahoma and a lot of the red states for centuries. And when you look at that as a whole picture, it really minimizes the people who are here doing good work and making change and making progress. And we are not all what folks picture as the state of Alabama.
Wow. I mean, I could spend so much time with Julie.
Right.
We need to definitely go back. We need to go back to Birmingham for a lot of different
Yes.
reasons. The food, the people,
Barbecue.
the barbecue. Yes.
The bread
drag.
and barbecue sauce. What?
Yes. Is that a Birmingham thing?
Is that a barbecue thing? I don't know. But
I've never
the bread
seen
with
that
the barbecue
before.
sauce was like delightful.
It was good. It was
Yeah.
good. But so Julie has built such a wonderful group of people in the community, and a Unitarian church, there's a lot of people who've left church that find their home there.
Right.
And when Elliot and I were going to scout the location prior to the event, looking at some tech stuff, we ran into an older couple in the hallway. Their names were Mary and Oscar. And they recognized me from the film. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're 1946, like, yes, And they're like, we've seen your movie. And so we're not going to come tonight because we want to save space for more people, which I thought was really cute. But they wanted to make a point to say hi to me. And Mary, the older lady, starts to get overwhelmed. And she's telling me the story. She's like, look, I might not be LGBTQ. And she's almost, the same age as my dad. So she's telling me a story about her dad and how she was pretty much had the same experience happen to her that is happening to me as far as not being accepted, but in the way where she was marrying her husband, Oscar, who was right there next to her, who just happened to be not the right kind of Christian. He was like, I don't know, Pentecostal or Lutheran, who knows, Episcopalian, and she was a Baptist or who knows what else, what other type of Christian, but they were differing.
Right.
And he would not walk them down the aisle and bless the marriage. And I was just, that story really stuck with me because, like, why are we doing this to each other? Like, could you imagine Jesus doing something like that? You're not the right kind of Christian and you're going to walk away from your daughter like that. And then now he's obviously not here anymore. And this has been 40 plus years for her.
Right.
And it's still, she's still emotional like that to that degree. Folks, we got to stop doing these things to each other, So they've left now, both of them have left their church congregations of the Christian faith in that regard and have found their home in the Unitarian church where they can still hold on to their core traditions and also embrace other traditions to find a common theme of justice for humanity, which I think is beautiful.
Yep. That's the whole, I think, point of all this is common ground that those two found on between their faith to fall in love and share that. And the common ground you're reaching to find through 1946, the documentary, it's not that we want to other or enemy people. It's just like, let's come to the table and talk about this to see where we can come together with far more that brings us together than that truly divides us, that we need to be on opposite ends of this planet so we can live peacefully.
Yeah.
So there's so many stories that unfold after these events where people come up and they're already just so emotional from watching a film like this and hearing Pastor Paul's talk and our stories that we share throughout the evening, that we're all just these little boys and girls and kids inside that have held these things for so long. They're still precious to our hearts and they hit our emotions just right, that we're waiting for healing or for your parent to tell you it's okay, I love you just as you are, to experience that unconditional love.
My name is Jerry Holliday, and this is my wife, Marie Holliday. My wife is the one that got me involved with Free Mom Hugs.
And I had been going I had probably been with Free Mom Hugs for about a year, maybe. And I went by myself. I mean, with my kids, they were really the ones that got me started in wanting to be involved. When I went to my first Pride event, it was with my two girls. And so I would always ask Jerry, I was like, hey, do you want to, you want to come with me? And he always said no. But when we had that one event, you know, he was really kind of scared a little.
How old is
So that's when he came, and I don't think he really he heard me talking about it in the way that it made me feel. And I don't think he really realized exactly, like, it's almost like a ministry
it?
of just showing up and showing people that they're loved just the way they are. They don't have to change. They don't have to be somebody else. That God loves them. We love them just because they're who they are.
She was going to an event that had a lot of threats and a lot of death threats, matter of fact. And I was afraid for her, so I ended up just going with her. It was Huntsville. It was Huntsville Pride. And like she said, I didn't know what I was getting into. At the Free Mom Hugs booth, I went to go get something to eat. I left, and on the way there, I probably hugged every drag queen there's neck, because they all lined up wanting a hug, a dad hug. And I was not expecting that day to be the way it was for me. Just to give somebody a hug and what it meant. Just for a person just to touch somebody, a mom or a dad, just to have that feeling. And I wouldn't take nothing in the world for it, the way it is. I wouldn't. It's so great. It is. And like my wife says, it's the closest to God we've ever found, because it's real. In Oklahoma City at Free Mom Hugs Revelation
The first Free Mom Hugs
Conference is what it was. And that's how we got to meet Rocky. And we got to see the movie for the first time there. And I was amazed. I didn't know. I had no idea.
I think it's very important because, especially where we live, there is no affirming churches whatsoever. You know, driving to Birmingham, it's an hour from where we live. And I just feel like it's so important for people to know that the things that they're sharing and the things that they're, you know, it's okay to be wrong about something. You know, we were involved in church for 20 years. And that's, we followed, and that's what we taught our children. And to hear, our daughter say that she tried to pray the gay away is it's very hard to hear as a parent, when I know that God loves her. Nothing changed when she came out. Nothing changed whatsoever. And I feel like this movie is very important for other parents to be able to understand that God created their children to be who they are. He didn't want them to change, and to know that it's a mistake and they can prove that. I don't, it's just so important.
Yeah, the movie changed me because, I don't know, as Rocky said one time, this big old redneck, you know, my daughter, like she said, our daughter came out gay, and there's no way I could abandon my daughter. No way. That's my daughter. That's my kid. I can't do it. No way. My love has never changed one bit for her. Still the same as it is with all my other kids. And it'll never change. No matter what. Never.
These were some beautiful stops.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Are we done with this one then?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Who else? What else? Anything else in Birmingham?
That's it.
I mean,
That was a lot.
it was a
It
lot.
was a lot.
I mean, I guess if that's it for Birmingham, then that's it for this episode.
Yes, it is.
I think the only thing left to do is thank everyone for listening and tuning in. And as always, like, follow, share, and
Yeah. Stick around for
See you
another
next time.
episode of the 1946 podcast. Thanks for being here.
bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the 1946 web series podcast, The Culture Shift Tour. Thank you to our sponsors, makingthingsright.org, for your generous donation and helping us produce this podcast. And to Uncut Studios in downtown Los Angeles. Step into a studio unlike any other. To learn more, follow them at Uncut Studios DTLA on Instagram.